Hey, what's happening everybody? It's Nick Olson, Chupacabra Offroad back, and today we have a little bit different vibe. I've been kind of wanting to do some story time type of videos, if you will. So we'll start off with this and we'll see how it goes. You have to let me know below in the comments if you like this type of content. But today's story time about the first time or a couple times I rode in a more modern side-by-side, being a Razor 900. And then also just a little bit of behind the scenes of kind of me as a person, where I came from before it led to the beginning of Chupacabra Offroad, and kind of my roots and passion and dirt, where it all started, and also working in the power sports industry. So I worked in the power sports industry for quite a while before I started this brand. Worked for two predominant brands, first being Fox Racing, who is a premium retailer of off-road protective gear as well as apparel and lifestyle. And then after Fox, I transitioned to Polaris. So what I'm about ready to share with you today was one of my best experiences ever of working in power sports. So again, if you guys like the content, let me know, and maybe we'll do some talking about the days of working for Polaris. I never had any event that was near as cool as what I'm about to tell you, but either way, there was still some good times working for Polaris as well. So let's get into it. So I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, which was a cool place to grow up in. And back then when I was younger, I started off playing in the dirt on a BMX bike, like a lot of you probably watching. At the time, Las Vegas was always known for having a cool culture, a big culture of BMX riding, racing. And then as I got a little bit older, transitioned into mountain biking, which I ended up getting really into, doing some racing for a couple of years before I kind of moved on to dirt biking. So it was fun growing up, and kind of like I said, always loved playing in dirt, always loved the two-wheel type of stuff. Here's a photo of me trying to look cool back racing. This is Mammoth Mountain in 1999. I think this was a dual slalom race back when that discipline of mountain biking existed, but good times with my buddies. Typical mountain biker, you know, $1,000 truck with a $5,000 bike in the back, you know, eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, going all over the West Coast racing Big Bear, Mammoth, Park City, all those type of places, and having a good old time with my buds. So fast forward, I finished college. I ended up moving to Northern California because I got a job working for Fox. Now, you guys are really gonna like this story if you're a motocross fan, or you follow motocross or followed it all in the last 10 or 15 years, because working for Fox during this timeline was really just an amazing time to be a motocross fan. And then also work for Fox because we had the premier athletes, with one being Ricky Carmichael, AKA the GOAT, as well as the other being James Stewart. So I joined the company, and here's a photo hanging out actually with Ricky in 2005, not long after I started. We had our sales meeting in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And here's a photo in front of James Stewart's bike, which at that time, James was my favorite. You know, like a lot of you guys that were motocross fans, we all thought that James was, you know, really the most amazing guy to ever throw a leg over a motorcycle, and some of the things that he could do were just unbelievable. So worked for that company, had a lot of amazing experiences, went to a lot of races, did a lot of riding. Here's a photo of my wife hanging out with the young Eli Tomac when he was on Geico. I think this might have been his rookie year. This is Paula, 2010, 2011, one of those years, I'm not sure, as well as Blake Wharton. So a lot of fun behind the scenes, got to get up close and personal with a lot of the riders. Here's my wife again, getting an autograph from Ryan Dungey, because of course after the Ricky and James kind of era, if you will, Dungey kind of took the throne and ran with it and won a lot of titles, and of course helped me make some more money selling a lot of Fox gear, just because he was the man, and winning a lot of championships. So a lot of great experiences. Another photo of my wife hanging out. This is Fox Irvine headquarters. She's standing in front of Ken Roxton's, I think his rookie year when he came over from Germany, as KTM 250, which obviously, if you guys follow moto, Ken is now one of the top three riders in the world. So just a lot of cool events and cool experiences, particularly if you're like me, if you love the fan aspect of the sport and riding, just all that type of stuff. And Fox was a company that was pretty big, but not so big that we were so removed from this type of thing, where I got to, even though I was a sales guy, really got to interact with some marketing. And like I said, lucky enough to kind of rub elbows with a lot of the cool people in the sport. So yeah, it's a little bit of name dropping, but these are just some amazing experiences. And maybe some of you guys that work in power sports, or if you're younger and you're thinking about getting into power sports, I would consider this to be like the pinnacle of enjoyment and experiences that I had when I did work for these companies over about 11 or 12 year period. So fast forward to a little bit later on, you know, I mentioned my wife, you know, we fall in love, or about ready to get married. And anyway, I decided to take her out to a Glamis trip that Fox was putting on. At the time, Fox was doing a ride-on tour with the other brand that they owned and created, Shift. So this was basically doing some off-road motorcycle free riding with guys like Twitch and Carey Hart and a few other guys, Jeff Emig being one of them. So it was a cool event where we got to kind of tag along, and since I'm bringing my wife with me, you know, I decided to rent a Razor. I had some interest in wanting to drive a Razor. You know, I'm seeing the Razor, you know, go from the 800 to the 900 with trailing arms. I'm thinking, oh, that's pretty, you know, pretty cool little rig. And, you know, my wife rode as well at the time, but, you know, for her to go to the dunes and us to do rides and hang together, it was kind of a perfect experience where we were going to go to Glamis. Like, let's just rent a Razor and see what it's all about, even though I was actually letting my boss ride my moto while I rode in the Razor that weekend. But it was a good time. We found a couple Razors that we were able to rent from a local dealer, and you know, kind of went up Oldsmobile Hill for the first time, did my first actual dune ride. We had a buddy who really knew Glamis well, so he knew how to kind of get us through the dunes and kind of take us over to where, you know, the flagpole is, or kind of where the swing set is. Obviously, this is long before the swing set even existed. And just go have some fun and kind of see what the Glamis lifestyle was. I hadn't been there in quite a while. And then, you know, obviously UTVs are really starting to kind of sink their teeth into in the beginning of the takeover of UTVs taking over Glamis. So the 900 was really fun. It was pretty good, a little bit better than I expected. I do remember how bad I used to buck in the whoops. One of my buddies jumped in the car and we went from the Glamis Flats where we were camping over to Olds, and the back end of the car was bucking so bad my buddy just burst into laughter as we were going through the whoop because he had a little bit of off-road experience. But it was a cool car. We could go up all the hills. We had a safe trip, you know. My wife and I were able to kind of have that experience together, and I kind of thought it might be a prequel of what was to come, you know. I was getting older, you know, future of having kids, that type of thing, and then also being able to share a different type of off-road experience. And I think unless you're with a bunch of guys out in Glamis on bikes, it's probably more fun to be in a UTV. I brought my bike out there a couple times. Like I said, unless you have a bunch of guys and energy to feed off of, find some jumps, that type of thing, it's not really that fun riding my two-wheeler with a bunch of UTVs and sand cars. So fast forward, you know, more amazing experiences working for Fox. I was lucky enough to get to go race Washougal a few times in the amateur days before the national. So that was amazing. If you guys aren't familiar, Washougal is an iconic motocross track up in Washington. It's kind of just over the Washington-Oregon border. Those are amazing experiences. Fox always had this killer spot to camp right next to the track, and also from a fan perspective, see a couple just amazing battles between Ricky and James at that track at that time, and even see Dungey really just kind of take it to Villapoto on his hometown track back in his 250 days. So it was cool. It was awesome experiences, and just, you know, great time to just be in power sports and really kind of lead with my passion. I've always been one of those people that kind of always realized that when I had passion for something, I'd put in that extra energy and effort. So by the time I'm in my early to mid 20s, I just decided I was going to try to choose a career path and choose a path in life that was really kind of predicated on passion, and then fill in the blanks from there. So that worked really well for me at that time. You know, being in my 20s and even early 30s, Fox was just an amazing company, amazing culture. I'm still good friends with a lot of buddies I work with, and even my bosses. I definitely think that we'll all be friends for life, and just had a great group of people who all really love the brand and love the culture. And that's great now, being a business owner, trying to grow Chupacabra and really be thoughtful now, like how do we build and how do we make an amazing culture. And I think it's a whole lot easier because I've actually lived through it and been able to experience that. So one other quick highlight, here's a photo from a historic race, Motocross of Nations, Budds Creek, Maryland, 2007. Here I am after the race, after Team America just won. This was kind of Ricky Carmichael's last hurrah, if you will. It's kind of when he retired and raced with Ryan Villapoto, and Team America really laid it down, and at that time proved that we were still #1 in the world for motocross. And this is an amazing experience just to kind of go and be part of that whole thing, be part of Team America, you know, drink some moonshine with the guys after the race. All right, so let's get into the story of the best experience I've ever had in power sports. And I mentioned Ricky Carmichael. For those of you that aren't familiar with him, he is known as the GOAT, the greatest of all time, the greatest motocross rider that's ever lived, America, European, whatever. So Ricky's basically the man, and even though he had retired back in 07, he did a lot of things to stay relevant to the motocross community like he still does today. Did a lot of type of stuff with Fox and just being around the sport that he loves so much. So fast forward to 2012, working for Fox. Fox decides to release a new premium helmet called the V4. Now, what they decided to do for all of us salespeople was do a contest, and the top performing reps in each region of the country would win a trip to go ride at Ricky Carmichael. So once I knew that that was on the line, I definitely had a plan. Basically, when we launched this new helmet, the goal was to get as many employees at all these dealerships trained on a training video and content so that, you know, of course, they'd be better versed to help sell the helmets, and, you know, they know more about it. They're going to talk more about it. They're going to sell more of them. You know, this is breaking into like a very expensive niche category. I think at the time it was $450 or $500, which is a hard segment to break into with helmets because people are really passionate. They're really emotional about the helmets that they really like. And you've got some big competitors, Arai, Shoei, and a few others. It's kind of right before 60 and a lot of this other next level helmet technology really starts to take off. So we launched the V4, and of course I put it to, I have a plan and I figure out how to win this contest. I beat everybody on the West Coast, and I get selected as one of the 3 salespeople along with my managers to go out to RC's, which was near Tallahassee, Florida, and go ride and hang out for a couple days. So there was always these type of cool contests, and people would win them and, you know, win cool stuff or memorabilia, you know, and at the time looking back, I probably didn't even realize how cool or special of an experience it was. It was just like a really good carrot, and I really made sure that I worked hard to get the win so I could have this experience. So either way, check this photo out. This is from Ricky's private test facility, which is where he did all of his training laps, where he earned all of his championships. I think he won 10 championships in a row, and his mom and dad helped him, of course, and groomed him to be the greatest of all time. So this is at the ranch, they call it, and this is walking right inside of Ricky's shop, and they were able to reach out to Suzuki and get us all a bunch of brand new bikes to go ride at the ranch for a couple days. So amazing to roll up. Of course, my managers show up with a couple brand new sets of gear and boots and helmets, and I mean, we were just treated from VIP like the second that we showed up. And really my first time actually riding on the East Coast, and probably my only time ever riding on the East Coast. So super excited to ride in Florida dirt. You know, I came from Vegas, which has probably the worst dirt in the country, to you know, doing road trips to Southern California to go ride tracks and just thinking that California dirt was the best. And it's funny how a lot of the top elite motorcycle athletes or motocross athletes will say that California is like hard pack and blue groove and not near as good as the East Coast. So it was amazing just to get to go ride in a different environment, let alone on a brand new bike. This is a 2013 Suzuki RMZ 250, which was a really awesome bike. So, and this is a really rad photo of me getting all geared up, and Ricky's helping me set the sag. So, you know, imagine this, guys, like in whatever sport you're into basketball, and you get to have, you know, one-on-one training session with LeBron James, or, you know, insert the athlete, Valentino Rossi, if you're a sport bike enthusiast, whoever. Like, it's such a rare occurrence that you get to have this type of up-close and personal time with someone who is literally the top of what they do from anybody, like I said, in the world. So again, I probably didn't really realize how cool it was as I reflect and check out all these cool photos I haven't seen in a bit. So here's a photo of the water truck. Ricky's dad was still out there prepping the track for us. You know, here's a photo of Ricky getting down, and this is Ricky's track. And he has an outdoor track, he has supercross tracks, and he's got it out here on a lot of property. And it was unbelievable. You know, we roll out and we get all geared up with our bikes, and you know, we had a pretty good sized group of people. We had a few managers, like I said, a few of us salespeople. Here's a group of us all smiling together, having a good time. And I giggle because not long after this photo was taken, people start crashing, people start getting hurt, and people started heading to the hospital not long after this. So it's kind of funny looking back, but basically I think, you know, this is like sensory overload for a lot of us. You know, like we're at Ricky's house, we're at the ranch, you know, Big Rick prepped the track, like we're on these brand new bikes, like, you know, and the hard part is, like, you know, a lot of us are pretty decent riders, some better than others, you know, but a lot of us hadn't ridden this type of dirt before. These jumps are still big. Like, it's just, the track is ripped deep. It's a little intimidating, you know, and especially it gets more intimidating after riding for 15 minutes and one of your managers, you know, wads up and he's wiping himself off the ground. He almost breaks his wrist like within the first 20 minutes of being there. So this is pretty funny. I have a couple screenshots of some of the tweets that Ricky was putting out, and here you see, you know, Ricky's like, oh, we're hanging out with some Fox people, and it's not starting off really well. So here's a video of my buddy Dave, who was my manager at the time, and Here he is with his ankles like swollen up like a grapefruit because there's a big double on Ricky's track, and Dave's a really good rider, and he had a 450 too, and he went for the double. He just didn't have enough pepper for it and completely cased it. And I actually had a GoPro on, but I missed the clip. I missed the crash. And, you know, he was tough, but he was in a lot of pain, and he thought he was going to ride the next day. And there's no way it was happening. But it was pretty cool to see RC help tape his ankle up. And he was, I think, the second or third person that went down that day. And this is after another one of my managers cased a small double, but he ended up breaking his ankle and got hauled off to the hospital. So this is like 3 of the managers. I think we had a broken wrist, we had a broken ankle, we had a severely swollen ankle, and then the other guy, he just got weeded. So kind of funny that the managers actually started going down before all of us salespeople, but you get more and more nervous, you know, even though we're kind of breaking in, we're getting used to the track and all that, that people start dropping like flies. So we got to ride for 2 days. Here's the morning photo from day 2, I believe, and you can see the crowd's a little bit smaller, you know, and I think Ricky at this point is like, all right, we don't want everybody to get hurt on this trip. Let's get into like some skills and drills, and let me show you guys like how I earned all my titles. And one of the tricks that Ricky did, where his mom taught him how to do or enforced, was that they would set up cones and they would do different sections of the track. So let's say it's a 2-turn combo, and Ricky would run some loops and he would get his best time. Let's call it, you know, 15 seconds. Well, Ricky had to go back and beat that time 5 times in a row before they work on the next section. So, you know, his mom didn't care if the track dried out, if the berm got blown out, if you know, whatever, he got a flat tire. Ricky had to figure out how to beat that fast time 5 more times and beat himself. And that was just a kind of a tactic that he used. So in the spirit of keeping us all safe and having a couple of us walk out of there, we kind of got into these little drills where, you know, he's kind of giving us some pointers. He'd hop on the bike and he followed me. I remember he followed me through a section. I still have the GoPro clip, and he passed me and gave me the thumbs up, which was super sick. And, you know, of course, we kind of avoided a lot of the big jumps at this point, but we're just kind of trying to link sections of the track together. And he really kind of showed us how he would break down a motocross track and what he would think about. Of course, as the old adage goes in motocross, you know, jump for show, corner for dough. So that was really fun and informative and a little bit safer. And it was great to learn from the GOAT and really see him in his element. So here's a photo that Ricky posted of me on his Twitter, and I was all geeked up. I thought I was cool, you know, getting posted on RC's Twitter back at the time. And it actually looked like I had pretty decent form in a couple of these photos, which wasn't as hard just because the dirt was so good and that Suzuki handled and cornered so well. So it was an amazing couple of days of riding, and I walked out of there safe and got to say I got to ride at Ricky's and hang out and get some lessons and learn some tricks that would help me when I went back home, and kept on racing, works racing, other things I was doing. At the time I was riding moto quite a bit, so it worked out really well for me just because I showed up and I kind of knew what I was doing because I've been living the sport and riding and racing and stuff. So amazing also too that I was that into the lifestyle at that moment in time to get a lot out of the experience, versus if I was one of those guys that didn't even ride, you know, it would have been cool but not really, and I would have like rode really poorly. So I rode pretty good and I was happy with myself. And speaking of riding, you know, after each day of riding, we're still at the ranch, and, you know, Ricky has some guns and some of the guys are shooting skeet, and he pulls out his Razor 4-seater. So this gets into the second time I ever got to ride in a UTV. And like I said, this is a couple of years after my Glamis trip, and it's in the Razor 900 4-seater. And here's a photo of it, and you know, it might look a little old school, but this was a really awesome car at the time. I mean, he had a long travel kit. He had done a little bit of motor work, I think. The classic 900 replaced the air intake to get a little more juice. You know, as you can see, a cool roll cage indoors with some real seats. And he took us for a couple rips around his property. You know, it's Florida. It's big flat terrain, kind of rolling hills. So, you know, there's no whoops. There's no you know, ruts and bumps, anything like we have here in the Southwest, but it was still really fun. And Ricky could drive really well, and I rode here up front with him, and he was just giggling. He would throw the car sideways. I thought he drove really aggressively, you know, and we're like, wow, you know, you're a good driver. And of course it's Ricky, so they're going to tell him that anyway, right? But he's like, anybody can do this. And at the time, Ricky was really trying to get into NASCAR, or he was driving a NAS truck at the time. So not only is he the best motorcycle rider of all time, but he had some real chops driving too, and spawned us on some hot laps. The 4 grown guys squeezed in the Razor 900, and it was a blast. And I remember like how good that car worked at the time for compared to the little 900 two-seater I rode in Glamis, because of course it was longer, it was wider, it had a little bit more power. Not that we got to go up any dunes or anything, but it was really fun. I remember coming home thinking like, wow, this is kind of getting closer. The UTVs are finally starting to be like a little bit more of a real off-road vehicle. You know, you can see these are little tires, probably 26, 27 inches at the time. All that thing would even pull. But, you know, there were some leaps and bounds from the 900. And as most of you guys know, if you've been in the industry for a while, once the 1000 came, which was right after I joined Polaris in 2013, then the game got changed again in terms of performance. And that's, of course, here we are today in 2021, where UTVs, of course, have completely taken over. So amazing overall experience. You know, Ricky took us to this fancy dinner at the governor's mansion. We got to go to a Florida State football game, you know, kind of just absorb and see like the college culture of a team that's really amazing, and a team, you know, a group of people that are really behind it. The fans were off the hook. They loved it, and just kind of see what the culture was like. And of course, Ricky's like a celebrity everywhere we go down there. You know, pretty much ran the show. So cool to just kind of talk shop with him. He, you know, brought us into his house. He has this amazing trophy room, as you can imagine. He had one helmet. If you guys are motocross fans, you might remember he raced this race, Millville in Minnesota, and it was a big time mudder. It was just a mud bog, but Ricky lapped everybody in the entire field. So it was just one of the most amazing credentials, another one on Ricky's illustrious career. And he had the helmet from that day with all the mud, you know, in a helmet case as one of his many trophies, as you could imagine. So really cool to kind of see and listen to him talk. And we were chatting about moto, talking about, you know, the guys of, you know, that era, 2012-13 versus his era. You know, here's a photo of his factory, Suzuki, which he was very instrumental in helping Suzuki develop that bike. And Ricky won titles on that thing immediately. So he obviously knows how to develop a bike and make a bike go faster, because around that time he was with Suzuki during the two-stroke era, but then once Suzuki started making four-strokes, basically the entire industry had to convert over to four-strokes to keep up. Yamaha had a head start, Honda was out, and then Suzuki and Kawasaki quickly followed. And to have a bike that could run a championship pace for a championship caliber rider and win a championship was a big deal, and Ricky was able to achieve that right away, which is another amazing feat in his career. So it's pretty cool. That bike kind of remained a lot of the same that Dungey even won the championships on, from what he said. So he knows how to develop a bike, and it's pretty cool to be, he was a part of that, you know, big shift in terms of technology and growth in the motocross and supercross world. And, you know, just to get to see him in his element and get to ride in a Razor four-seater in a cool environment with a cool group of people. So that's it. That's my story. It was an amazing time. Let me know if you guys like the content. If you want to hear some stories of when I worked for Polaris. There were some cool events I got to attend and experiences I got to have also working for a company in POWERSPORTS. But nothing really came close to working for Fox during that era. Being a motocross fan, being a motocross rider, an enthusiast, part-time racer, you know, just a fan of the sport. And motocross is really, you know, is about as badass as it gets, in my opinion. I think motocross athletes are top of the food chain in POWERSPORTS. You know, maybe even in all of action sports. I think there's so much respect for them and anybody who's into this whole world that we're into. So I got some more stories. This is probably the coolest one, but I hope you guys like the content. If you do, go ahead, like and subscribe, and tune in. We got a whole lot more coming your way.